Welcome to Discover the Terror. I'm Maximilian Schmidt, and this is Herbert, your ghoulish host for this evening. Tonight's guest is a Texas-based radio host, film producer, and screenwriter, whose stories span a wide range of genres, particularly horror, sci-fi, and crime. Writing is what gives him strength and keeps him sane in this insane world of ours. Here to talk about screenwriting, horror, and everything beyond is Richard Rosso. Richard, welcome to the show.
It's an honor, Herbert, to see your smiling face. It warms cockles, whatever those are. It's and I know Herbert would probably tear a cockle out of me if he could with those teeth, but I'm happy to be here.
No, Herbert's benign. He wouldn't do it without permission, of course. So
he's got manners. I like it.
He's got manners. So, Richard, I kind of like asking this question to my guests, kind of here and there, and you're the lucky guest tonight. So, what was like the first moment you truly remember feeling fear? And how has that experience influenced your view of horror?
Well, I grew up in New York City, so I felt fear every day. I probably was more fearful than a lot of people. So actually, horror was a escape for me from the reality of fear. Even though, in some cases, in some films, and same probably for you, where there's some films that leave a real mark on you, right? Especially when you're a kid. And my mother, I come from a single mom, and she would go out and leave me. I had been 8 or 9 years old, leave me in an apartment. And there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And we used to have late night horror movies. And I would keep them on. And so I had horror outside, horror inside. And what always got me was the horror that was more realistic. Like, some stuff was I loved. I'm sure you do too. The old classic horror. Frankenstein, Dracula,
Yeah, of
Frankenstein
course.
meets the Wolfman, all that
The
creature features.
foundation.
The foundation, like that's what you started at. And then one morning in the mid 70s, a little early in that, my mom was out and they ran Night of the Living Dead. And that was the one that got me. That was the one that scared me more than anything else because it looked plausible.
Yeah, I mean, just people attacking other people. Simple.
Right? And satellite and radiation. And like the whole story scared me more than any kind of gory movie, although I do love Squirm and Jeff
Hmm.
Goldblum's work, right? That's always great. But that story got me. That was the first one that really and children shouldn't play with dead things.
Yes.
That was another one. So that whole they were running those in the mid 70s like consistently on local New York television.
Hmm.
And I was the kid watching all that stuff while my mom was out all night and I'd hear weird stuff in the hallway. So, the horror was a scare for me, but it was also a salve for me. It's strange. It was an escapism, but I was also scared. But frankly, I was more scared of real life. But there were certain elements of horror that really got me. And the more realistic Carnival of Souls, the original, right? Um, that trio, Night of the Living Dead, Carnival of Souls, and
Children shouldn't play with dead things.
yeah,
Yeah.
those three. And I loved all horror.
No, of
I loved the
course.
blob, I loved everything. But some of that stuff seemed like that could happen realistically. And
Well, I think it's interesting that you keep drawing to the point of that could happen because I'm in the same boat as you. That's the type of horror that I am drawn to, and I like watching more than the goblins and ghouls. But I think for you, it seemed like watching that made you be able to digest the types of horror that was going on around you. Because you are seeing that's plausible. This is how they're dealing with it. This is how it could go wrong. This is how I can get out of it. Like, it's probably subconsciously going in your head, right?
yes, a lot of people like were on drugs. It was very big time for substance abuse. So
Mm-hmm.
people would sort of walk around like that. Like I was on Times Square even as a little kid, and you know, it the whole thing of people being out of their minds, like the crazies, right? It just fascinated me. Uh, because you could build a story about who is this person that actually is now a zombie. Like you always thought about that. I always thought about who was that person in the gown? Like where were they before they became
Yeah.
this? So you build backstory in your head of all these different characters, because sometimes you don't get the backstory. The poor caretaker in Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things tied to the tree was one of the scariest scenes ever because he couldn't get up. He's trying to get up and he's tied, and and he's trying to stand up and they all come and get him. I mean, that was like, okay, so that's the kind of stuff that really compelled me to like stories of all kinds. But that slice of horror genre was always big for me.
Oh man, there's so much I want to unpack here. So let's kind of let's touch on George because you mentioned Night of the Living Dead, and
Mm.
the you mentioned the crazies as well. So he's
Yeah.
definitely going to encapsulate this part of the conversation. But I think the reason why Night of the Living Dead was so effective for you and everybody else when it came out, especially seeing it on TV if you didn't get a chance to see it in theaters when it came out, is he shot it like a documentary because that's kind of how he started, right? Didn't he work at like a news station or something like that? I know he did Mister Rogers for a bit, but
I don't know if you probably remember this part, but when they show the black and white television,
yes.
like where to go to the safety station, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the newscaster and all that, and it looked real. There was a point in New York where when we were watching black and white televisions, this is a funny story, where when that TV guy came up, it was almost like War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It looked like a real newscast because you didn't see the outside of the TV. Your TV at home filled the screen just
Yeah.
enough. So my grandmother's sitting there one night. She's babysitting me, and she's looking at the screen. And my little Italian grandma goes, "Oh my God, what the going on?" Because she's thinking it's a real newscast. So I wind up calling the station. I said, "Listen, you're like I'm like 9, 10. I'm gonna call the station. I get a hold of them. Listen, you're freaking people out, okay? Because you're showing this. I've seen the movie 1,000 times, but you almost gave my grandma a heart attack because it looks like the TV is
Yeah.
like the real reporter." So
Mm-hmm.
going forward, the following year, they would put under the screen where the guy was talking, the announcer, a dramatization.
Wow. No way. That's so cool. And it's funny.
Because
Like it was
yeah,
so effective.
because I'm like you're gonna kill people like hey, that's like War of the Worlds. Like I was a big reader as a kid. I don't know about you, but I was reading all those things, right? Planet of the Apes, and I was into all. And I'm like, listen, my grandmother almost killed over, thinking like dead people were coming back to life because the way it's set up in our little poor black and white TV. And then the following year, they have dramatization all along the bottom so that when you were watching it, you would know it wasn't real. And that was pretty fun. I said, Grandma, look what you did, Grandma. Look what you did.
But okay, like I mean, again, right? It's like the people affected by something attacking people. Like your grandma thought it was real, Like if George like really hit the nerve with his like early stint of making films, because even a lesser talked about one, Martin, he really humanized a vampire because it was this like troubled little like this troubled teenager expressing this fact of is he a vampire, is he not, like it took the supernatural element and kind of made it more of a backseat psychological one, which is really fascinating.
The only person better than that, about the same, and people will argue with me because I love George Romero, and I know
Yeah.
George, his son, and I'm really close, and I love George C. and his
Mm,
wife, Alan Ormsby. Did you see Death Dream?
I
When the
haven't.
Vietnam soldier, oh my gosh,
Okay, Death Dream,
it's a
gotcha.
Vietnam soldier who gets killed overseas, and his
Yeah.
mother is making a wish for him to come back,
Oh.
and he comes back, but he's dead. So he knocks on the door, and everybody, and he's sort of freaky, like he's rotting over
Oh.
time.
Yeah.
It
Ooh.
You would love it because it's in the genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get the DVD of it, and the way he spirals from being trying to be normal. He won't eat. He does weird things. The dog barks at him, but he's not the same son. And the father understands it, and the sister understands it, but the dad doesn't. He says, "This is not my son." But it's that almost Carnival of Souls,
Yeah,
dead person son coming back. I mean, it has that feel of being real that you would probably love if you have not seen it. It was,
I
I think, it
haven't.
was done after, maybe, but even before, might have been done before. I think he was working with Bob Clark still on that, but I think it
Mm,
was before Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. And it's
okay.
not talked about a lot, but that was one of those other late night Ormsby's. And you knew it was Alan Ormsby, even as a kid. It had that, like George has that feel. You know a George Romero movie, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
You know an Alan Ormsby movie too. Uh, and that was in the same vein.
Wow.
But
Okay.
nobody really talks about it. Yeah.
Well, your experience with films and seeing it on TV, and you mentioned growing up in New York. So I got to ask, in that era, like 42nd Street was the thing, like those big exploitation movies playing on that block. Like, what's your experience with 42nd Street and goes in those type of theaters and seeing that type of film?
Movies were my thing, movies and books,
Yeah.
right? Even as a little kid, and that was just to escape the home life.
Hmm.
I created my own little world and wrote my own stories and did other things. Like I even wrote little scripts for Halloween. Like people wanted to do a Halloween party, I said, "Here's what we do," and we created a whole scene with different
Oh, that's awesome.
different, I would run wild on Times Square when I was like 10. I'd be
Hmm.
like all over the place. Never felt really unsafe because it was my home,
Yeah.
and the people, and it was like being in Carneyville. Like the people were so strange, and then all the strange movies that you get in. And I always found a way to sneak in. I'm sorry, I hate to say that, but I even found a way to sneak into the nudie shows. I
The
mean, I
desire
was
is real.
it was so easy, dude. Today, but it was so you know, easy. Where the guys like treated kids like adults, and they would go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay. Um, so I got to see all of that, but the people around 40 seconds again. Remember, there was a lot of crime in that period of time. This
Yeah.
Times Square was pretty seedy
Hmm.
at that point. But the more seedy it was, the more I felt not at home, but felt like I've seen these people in Night of the Living Dead,
Yeah.
you know. So it was that kind of thing. So yeah, no, that was great. It was great to understand people, to build out characters,
Hmm.
try to build backstories. I always tried to build backstories for everybody that I ever ran into as a kid. Like what, always fascinated with people's stories. Like what kind of needs that they have, wants, surprises in their lives. And I would create them sometimes from some of these people that I met, some that I talked to, that would just come up and talk to me even as a kid because they could tell they were lost. And
Hmm.
I learned a lot about, I think before you learn a lot about writing and there's something formal to it, you have to have a very strong EQ and really be able to put yourself in another person's shoes to create a character. Because you know how it is when you create a character. If they say one line that seems weird for them, this person, Maggie, wouldn't say, or Erica wouldn't say in my film certain things because they talk a certain way. And you put yourself in the shoes of that character and you give yourself a 360 view of where that person's sitting. And then what I also do is put together a music list
Hmm.
of all the music I think this character would listen to. And that also helps me with my dialogue. So, but I learned a lot about people growing up in New York, and just being a kid on the street. I mean, you probably see stories of Gen X and millennials and all that, that we were latchkey kids. Like parents would go to work and leave you home all day. Like you're on your own, man. You make your own food, or it was time where divorce was picking up and
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff. It was a great time. I loved it, but when looking back, it does help you if you are a writer or you're someone who's very super sensitive to other people, how it can get you thinking differently than the rest. And I never really did fit in with the other kids. I wasn't sports guy. Um, I was in the library, you know.
Hmm.
that was like, and that was my thing.
Soaking up the literature.
I loved books, and If a movie came out, I had to read the book because every time how it
Yeah.
would work is when a movie came out, as part of their marketing, they would create a paperback
Hmm.
book, and you would go into a drugstore or a stationery store, and once you read the book, like when the Poseidon Adventure came out, right? And I walk into a drugstore and I'm like 8 7 8 years old, and I there was the book by Paul Gallico, and I said, Dad, please buy me the book. And it was a little too much for me at that time, at that age, and I just read it again not too long ago because I still have the same book. Um,
Oh, that's nice.
but always coupled the book with the movie and saw where they were different and where they were similar, which always fascinated me, especially with sci-fi and horror. Yeah,
I think it's interesting, like how the books can be completely reworked with the film coming out, and then how they always like harken back to that paperback, and the images of the film are on that paperback. Because
on
I
the
just
back.
read, I Never Promised You a Garden of Roses. If I'm saying it's either Garden or Bed of Roses, and yeah, I read it and I love the images so much on the paperback, and I found out it was a movie afterwards. And it was funny. The images were from the film. Have you ever seen the film? It was done. It was produced by. I'm
I know
blanking on his
about
name
him.
right now. He's a
Yeah,
famous B horror movie producer from the '70s, and he kind of had his hands in everything. What's his name? Oh
I know
god,
who you're talking about.
you know what I'm
Okay.
talking about, right? Let's see.
Hello? Herbert doesn't even know.
Oh, Herbert just told me. Roger Corman.
That's right. How can I?
Thanks,
How could you
Herbert.
forget that? How could
I
you
know,
forget
right? But it got me, I guess the marketing worked even years later from that book, because then I checked the movie out and I loved the movie as much as I liked the book. So yeah, it was cool, and you obviously see that now. But I think that was a cool trend. But I want to go back to that one thing you said, about Times Square was seedy back then, but for you it didn't feel dangerous compared to like maybe if somebody was visiting. Like,
Mhm.
why? Let's break down that perspective. That's so fascinating how one person can see a place one way, and then somebody that's just visiting a completely different view. And obviously, it'll be more of a dangerous, let's stay out of this neighborhood type perspective. But for you, it's like my home. You know it. Why? What's the difference? It's like just you spent more time there, so you know the secrets.
I think it's just like wherever you grow up, that's home. Like
Yeah.
you don't know if it's good or bad. You just know that's your environment, right? And you people adapt differently
Mm-hmm.
to that environment. And I think that's why I could feel like New York is a very, very small place because I grew up there. Um, and I think I don't think that's out of the ordinary compared to like where anybody grows up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get to know your environment and you don't feel as uncomfortable. Listen, I always walked around with a head on a swivel. I wasn't stupid and I wasn't, and I've gotten mugged, I don't know how many times, and I almost gotten mugged and was able to talk myself out of it more times. So it was more of the, this is my place. Like Coney Island was the same thing. There was this freaky stuff in Coney Island. The If I wish I could replicate the wax museum at Coney Island and have you in there and see what your face would be like being a horror freak, you would have flipped. It was dimly lit. You know, you walking through and all these things from murderers from the 50s and the 60s, and how they put those scenes together. And wax is, I'm being very poetic here. We have a lot of poetic license. I don't know if it was, they look like a bunch of mannequins all with blood spatter and all that,
Mm-hmm.
but as a kid, I'm in there and I'm freaking out at some of the things that I'm seeing. So I always seem to find the darkest side of things,
Yep.
and I always felt like there was light there. I never felt, I was more scared again of, because I was a radio freak. I'd listen to the radio every, like, all night, and the all night news station would broadcast whenever there was a murder. And I'm using this as a premise for another script that's more of a period piece, but um, I was so overly scared of someone trying to break in my house, and even my cousins would say, "You watch all these horror movies." and you do all these things, but you're more scared of like a burglar breaking into your house. It was just, I don't know, just weird. Um,
I mean, it's real. Somebody could break in, and God do what the hell? We don't know what the fuck they're gonna do. Steal something or something worse. And obviously, that might be the horror influenced thinking. But I think because we are so embedded in horror, we are not afraid to have or know that possibility to maybe better protect ourselves or whatever, right? It's like we're
well, it also take our imagination off the rails too. That's another bad thing though, because I couldn't sleep at night because I would build this whole picture in my head and nothing ever happened. Right?
yeah,
It was
exactly.
like a circle of imagination. Like I look at all my old report cards from my New York schools, and it's always is he's a great student, but he's always daydreaming, and that that's what I was doing. I was creating stories in my head, and oh, that guy I met. I wonder where he went to school. Did he go to school? Like, how could he go to school? Was he normal once? And it was that kind of thing for me. And writing also became like a therapy
Yeah.
of escape. Reading, writing was a really, and movies, right? Big escape. Um, and that just influenced me in everything that I do. Gives me a different perspective on things. But I think people look at horror as they walk in, they get a thrill, they walk out. But I think for
Hmm.
some people, they are looking at the psychology behind it. Like,
Yes.
I don't know if you like a lot of some of the modern stuff, like some horror movies. I'm like, how did the hell did this get made? Um, but like Wrong Turn is like one of my favorites because it's
Yeah.
in the woods, right? These people, but there's always these other people that support them in the woods, like the normal looking people that are like, yeah, go ahead, take that road,
Hmm. Yeah,
action
keep
road.
them off our back. We'll,
Yeah,
we'll,
right,
we'll,
right.
you
Yeah.
know.
We'll throw you out there, right?
Yeah.
So movies like that too, I love them. Eli Roth, I think, is like a genius with some
Yeah,
of the stuff.
it's funny. Eli, so I wanted to become, like, so the first film I ever saw, like a horror film that really got to me was Texas Chainsaw. I saw that 2006 when YouTube, like, really became a thing, but copywriting wasn't really understood, at least for that YouTube first stage. So people would
Hmm.
upload movies on there in parts, like the first 10 minutes, part one, next 10 minutes, part two. So I stumbled on Texas Chainsaw, and I completely was like, whoa, whatever this is, I don't know how to describe it or boil it down, but I want to make it. I want to make this. And then at 8 years old, I found Eli Roth's name on Hostel 2, a little DVD at the German Best Buy, because every summer I'd go to Germany to visit my grandparents, and my
Hmm.
grandpa would, fuel my love for horror by like taking me out and renting stuff for me, because my mom was like, you can't watch this stuff. So I'm indebted to him. But I remember seeing Eli Roth's name and just being so fascinated by just how it looked. I was like, so exotic and experimental to me. Just the lettering is so exciting. And I saw
Yeah.
a writer, director, producer. I'm like, okay, so that's what I want to do, whatever that is. And so I'm always gonna be indebted to Eli too, just by like having that spark and seeing Hostel a little too young, because it was just like so much for me. But I was
That
just
second
like,
one was pretty intense too.
it was the moment the scythe scene was like. Even my grandpa's like, all right, let me cover your eyes for this. Like, this is a little too much.
But yeah, like you like Cabin Fever, man. That
Yeah.
was another great one. I'm sorry. The original. They've already made like five of them already. I don't know how, but because the movie wasn't relatively speaking out that much, that long. But they made already like another one. But that first one where the kids go into the cabin, that was great. Now that's why I always became a little more fascinated with writing about rural places.
Mm-hmm.
Being in Texas, like you met Texas Chainsaw, right?
Yeah.
And we go to there's the scene where the green Volkswagen pulls up to the gas station.
Mm-hmm.
That's about 2 hours from me, and
No
it's still there.
way.
Yeah, it's still there. So we go, and they serve barbecue there, and they have a lot of the old props like the truck,
They have a gift
and
shop, right? Like, you get
yeah,
shirts.
they have a
Yeah.
great gift shop. But it's great. I mean, we love going there. I got a great shirt from there, so it's really neat. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw, right? That whole rural story,
Mm-hmm.
right? And rural Texas stories to me, fascinating. And then I go through a lot of small towns in Texas, and they are their own characters. They are their own personalities. You wonder the life and death of this building. You turn this
Mm.
building into a person, a three-dimensional character that which is part of what we did in Maggie's place, where the diner also becomes alive to serve a demon. Because when you walk through some of these buildings and you think about the history behind them, people have lived in them, people have died in them, multiple families have lived in them. Now they're empty for 30 years. And the fascinating thing about Texas is when buildings get abandoned, drive by in 10 years, drive by in 15, drive by in 20. They're still there and they're still empty. And you wonder who owns that? Why is that there?
Hmm.
So Texas has got, Texas is great and it's got a lot of great history. But man, if you sat in a small town Texas that's sort of dying, you would create. I know, like there's the Last Picture Show, which is in Archer City. It's one of the best films out there. You get the feel for it. It's almost
Yeah.
like maybe they could have used. I think it was Peter Bogdanovich, but he probably could have used zombies instead of people. It
Hmm.
still would have been good. Sybil Shepherd, zombie naked, probably would have done well. But she's pretty hot then. So it leads to the mystique of when you go eat in small diners and you see things on the wall that have been there forever, and you wonder, did some mass murderer eat here once?
Yeah, there's the
On the
history.
road?
It's a mystery.
Like a Jeepers Creepers thing? Like, did he
Hmm.
stop maybe for coffee? He could have stopped in this diner because it looks like he stopped here.
Could have sat in that booth that you're sitting in right now.
Could have. Yeah. So Texas is great too as an inspiration, and a lot of writers I love, like Taylor Sheridan and all that. They see Texas as the character,
Yeah.
and
Oh
that's
man.
that's you know it's just the way it is. But and Texas Chainsaw, those guys, they saw the old house, the family, everything. My friend David Bourne played the stepfather. There was the episode where the Texas Chainsaw, where I don't know, but it was like a relative that inherits the house, young girl. I think it was. I don't know if it was called.
Oh, you mean Texas Chainsaw 3D?
Yeah, no, no, that one, no. It was. It was one of the more serious origin stories. Like she inherits the old house. Brunette. I can't remember
Was it
them, but it's.
Leatherface?
I think it's Leatherface. Might be
Yeah.
Leatherface. Yeah, he had a big part in that. And you'll see him in different movie when you go on channels and all that. You'll see him. He's dressed like a hillbilly
Hmm.
and all that. But I think it was Leatherface, and that was sort. Look, there were certain remakes that I really liked, and some that I.
Same.
Why did
Same.
they make this? Why did they even bother to make this? What is this?
I gotta say that one for Next Generation with McConaughey, but I really just love the batshit craziness of it. That it's still like a fun watch for me, you know.
Oh, I get it. I totally get it. And I can watch trash horror too. It's Basket Case. Where'd that come from? And that's New York, right?
That's New
That is
York,
New York
42nd
City,
Street. Mm-hmm.
right? So it really looked like that. They did a great job of showing you what really it looked like.
I mean, that's what I
And
love about those low budget films because they would just shoot on 42nd Street, and that's like a time capsule. Like Maniac was another big one because that really just lived in the seedy side of New York, so you just saw it in
yeah,
all its
or
glory.
Zombie. Remember when they go on the
Oh
boat? The
yeah.
cops go on the boat and they go down into the
Oh
cabin.
man, love that. Fulci's
Fulci,
my
right?
god
Yeah,
tier of horror directors. I love him so much.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I okay, so I want to go back because you mentioned so many interesting things. I just wanted to pick apart, but abandoned buildings, right? I have like a weird fascination with abandoned shopping malls and abandoned mental institutions. I have like scripts for both of them, right? Because I'm just so fascinated in the history and like what causes the beginning of the end. And you just feel like there is like that residue ghost of the place that still just haunts it. Like a couple buddies of mine, like freshman year of college, went to New Orleans to shoot a documentary, and we broke into the abandoned Six Flags there, and just really walked around and like captured like the decay and the rust of the metal. The thing I always remember about that place is just sitting in the silence and hearing all the rusted metal like creak in the wind, and just being the only one there, and seeing the swamp water take over and the gators in the back. Like, it was just like, I'll never remember or have that experience again. And it's sad because they're tearing it down right now. So I'm glad I got to, have a taste of it.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences of just going into an abandoned place and just like feeling the ghosts there?
Plenty. Plenty in New York. When I was like in my late teens and 20s, I was always in abandoned factories, abandoned buildings. I was totally fascinated with them, and there were so many like lace mills, textile mills. You go to upstate New York, there's hulks of buildings, neighborhoods of empty homes. But to your point, there's an allure to that. Like, there are people who do that, right? And they post all that stuff, and I watch it all. Like when they go through these, I love it. Like, I watch all of that when they go through all these buildings, and they still find stuff. There's one guy that finds like abandoned houses in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you walk in, and like everything is still there, like pictures of the family, books, the bedspreads are still on, and you're like, what happened here?
Yeah.
And if you have an imagination, you know what happens, right? You know, your head's blowing up. It's
when I was writing the abandoned mental institution script of mine, I found this book that collected all of these records and journals that were found stowed up in an attic of some abandoned asylum, and they kind of like chronologically like put it in the book. So you're just reading these random notes and like letters left behind, and it's just like building the stories and the types of people that work there. Like this one patient that was granted more rights in the building and had to do yard work and stuff, and he got like so sucked in, and he's journaling his experience, and then like died on the field of like maintaining the location. It was just fascinating, like getting that guy's perspective that you would have never gotten if that journal was not left in that attic. So again, the ghosts and the stories that are just there to be discovered and consumed and expressed in future projects and works and all that. So that's why I dig it. There's a high off of it,
It and there are people out there that is absolutely a thing. There's an old shot. There's the old IBM office building, the first original one that was built in upstate New York, that's been abandoned for probably close to a decade, and now they have all the they've been trying to crack down because people go through it, and IBM pretty much like left everything there, like the office seats, the desks, and people find that fascinating. But to me, that's sort of a newer building. I love these older buildings, especially in Texas. You go through a town, you find a building, and you walk in it, old bank or whatever, and it's again, you think of the story, you start thinking about the people who live there at certain homes, it definitely creates, like what you did, it definitely creates a lot of fodder, right?
Yeah.
Especially when people leave notes behind, or they just leave behind everything. Like, I still don't get that when this guy walks into a house and the dishes are still on the table, and clothes are in the closet, and no one lives there. What happened? It's that kind of thing that for some people, they don't want that. I don't want to see that. But if you have like you said, you got this imagination, you're a writer, you create all. You walk into one of those bedrooms, and you've already created 1,000 stories in your head, and before you walk out, it's
on the writer's head and understanding it. Like, what is your process as a writer in general, but specifically screenwriting? Like, can you walk me from the inception of an idea and like how long it takes for you And obviously it's case by case, but how long it takes for you to really think, this is an idea I'm going to outline, and then I'm going to go and write a script for it and research and all that. Like, how does that work for you?
I'm very character driven.
Mm-hmm.
And something bad has had to happen. Like, I've already got some form of inciting incident in my head, and I got to work out from it. Like, I had this idea about I was reading a history book about Brigham Young,
Mm-hmm.
and the slaughter he did to try to keep everything the way it was to be in Utah, right? Their own code of living. And I had this whole story about, like, when they were going through a particular area and they got massacred by Indians, and they talk about how all the stuff was left. Like, the Indians took a lot of stuff, but they left a lot of linens. And I said, man, what about a story about, like, a quilt, a haunted quilt that was part of that massacre and somehow wound up in an antique store somewhere. So something has to create the story, something I'm reading, and I'll create some sort of story in my head. Like, for example, with Maggie's place, I walked into a diner and they had those bells on the door. You know, when you walk in, so people know you're there. And I walked through one in a very small town. I walked through the door, and I said, "My gosh, like these bells can wake demons. I mean, these bells are crazy. Like, they're so loud. Why are they so loud? You know, so
well, to
loud."
interject real quick, Maggie's Place, that is a script you're writing right now.
Writing right now, that I'm rewriting.
And what's the general pitch, so when you do mention it again, like, people get the context?
Well, it's like you said, what motivates you? I need a theme. Sometimes I need a particular theme. And with this, it was about grief.
Yeah.
I started reading about the bells and I started about grief. And then I said, gosh, grief, a strong emotional feeling creates openings in the atmosphere. It creates openings for things to happen. So I said, what about a mother's grief? A mother who loses a child. That's got to be the strongest energy ever. And if anything, demons can enter through longing, but bells can somehow drive those demons away. So that's what got me into, with the bells on the door of this old diner, to write Maggie's Place about a whole family of females that are culinary experts, especially pies. That's their thing. But grandma loses her daughter to a terrible accident and winds up killing herself in the diner. The granddaughter winds up inheriting the diner 20 years later, where it's, as we talked about, it's abandoned. Everything is left in place. But there's a demon that is keeping the grandmother spirit hostage because she's a mother who lost her daughter. My main protagonist is a daughter who lost her son. But guess what? Erica's grief is a lot stronger because it just happened. And the demon decides, I'm dropping this cupcake. I'm going for this one. So as she's trying to redevelop the diner, you start to see how this demon emerges and becomes part of the diner, and how the fight that she has to save that. And this now demon has her son's soul, and he's going to make a trade. I'm going to trade you for him, his soul for you, because her grief was delicious. So it's this whole story about how the demon gets into the diner through an old jukebox found in an old train depot, and no one really knows where it came from and why is it there. So it starts out as a love story in the beginning in the 70s of grandparents, and then leads to today and the progression of the diner and what it is now. So I play a lot on the old building structure, and that buildings have a soul. And we talked about this not too long ago. But remember, we talked about Tourist Trap?
Yep,
that was like one of the best movies we've ever seen.
Yes,
right?
Definitely top tier. Can't. It's Mount Rushmore great.
And I turned the walls as an extension of the demon They are living and breathing underneath where it looks like maybe it could be insulation. And one of the I tried to put some levity in the script where I've got some characters that are real
Hmm.
characters, and they are based on people that I do know and I have met. Um, they're way off the charts eclectic for Texas. And when they touch the wall, because the wall's crumbling, it goes, "Ooh, it feels like skin." It feels that's not insulation. What is that?
Mm.
And I got that from Tourist Trap when Chuck Connors, whoever's character was, wife was in the little cutout there, and one of the girls touches her, and we think she's
The
a
mannequin,
mannequin
yeah.
or a wax figure, but no, it's her, right? Ooh, it feels like skin. So it's like when you write, like you can pull bits and pieces as homage to all these great horror films, but you don't want to totally repeat the tropes, like that you see. So that it's really about this building and freeing spirits, redemption of a mother who thinks she killed her son, but she by accident, but she didn't, and how this thread of culinary expertise and the theme that I built it on was this: not only the grief, but when it comes to cooking, you I don't know if you ever had in your family whoever cooked. Like my great grandparents were Italian, and they're like when we write, say we do a recipe, you do a recipe, you have these little things that you add
Yep.
that may not be written down, right? They're
Hmm.
like I know this, like Italians are like that crazy like that. They're like, what? Yeah, a, a cookbook, a little this, little that. But the whole theme is small things lead to big things, and how the demon is finally fought and ended is through one little accident by some nondescript guy that is Erica's granddaughter's cook assistant who just happened to know Latin based on how he grew up and changes or shifts it in the third act. So it's not like a gory story. There is also a strong element to the characters that people would relate to, or at least through some of the scare or the beats, they would get some comedic relief because I wanted to make the characters incredibly likable, even though Erica was lost her son who drowned because she was drinking and she feels the guilt of that, and she thinks movie is going to take it away. I want the audience to be invested less in the horror and more in the characters, but knowing they want these characters to make it. We know we want Erica to be happy. We know we want this group back together again. But somewhere along the line, this old diner probably has to go. And then we go through the process of how this diner gets taken out and the demon with it.
Wow.
um,
Okay.
and so it's that kind of a story. I've written stories that are more, every horror story I try to write, and then I'll talk to other producers and they'll go, well, that kind of horror is not selling right now. I'm like, well, I just finished this because you told me a few months ago this was the horror that was selling. Yeah, but that was like 3 months ago. I'm like, oh my
Mm.
god. Like, so I don't have a lot of this gore kind of thing. Like Phil Falcone, who is a great guy, he produced Terrifier,
Yeah.
right? So Phil, like I think they started the first Terrifier at Damien, they did it for $250,000, right?
Hmm.
And this think about there's something about clowns that always are creepy.
Oh yeah, of course. It's
There was a
inherent.
point I told Phil, there was a point in the third Terrifier that even I got a little queasy. Like,
They
like
go hardcore number three.
with the Christmas thing, like
Yeah.
I was sitting there going, I said, Damien, Leon, I'm Dione. I said, Damien must have. I mean, who wants to be in his head? This is crazy. Like I never get queasy at film,
Yeah.
and I've seen, this one got me. So I didn't want to. In all credit to that genre and the people who love it, and I love all kinds of horror like you do,
Mm.
right? I'm not like some snob, but I wanted to create a story where you love the characters first, like a cabin in the woods where you're vested in these characters making it. You hate this demon. And I wanted to make it as harrowing as possible. So I love to have stories. I even wrote a sort of a zombie script with George C. Romero, we did a whole, not a spoof, but the whole thing today is about your gut health.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's about your microbiome. Watch television. Every commercial is for your gut.
Oh yeah.
I get that. And I'm like that too. And I said, well, what? And so I started reading all, like, listen, if anybody ever saw my search history, they would probably arrest me. Like, what the hell?
What is this guy looking up?
But they talk about how long your gut, the bacteria in your gut lives after you die, especially the bad bacteria. So I said, well, what if that's the reason why people are turning? And these zombies not only crave flesh, they also would like a donut once in a while because sugar creates the bad bugs in your gut. So it's a whole story about how everything is derived from the gut, and what is in there gets, I don't want to use the word alienish, but they take on a life of their own because no one can figure out what made your gut biome go awry. And that's just the thing about when they talk about make everybody healthy, right? We was trying to eat healthier and all that. What if it just got out of control and these bugs took over your body? And they wanted human flesh, like the brain wants the flesh, but the gut biome wants the donuts. And so it was so George goes, my dad would probably hate this movie, which means I love it, would love this script. So but I created some really strong characters. One had cancer, one was pregnant, that you really wanted to make sure
to root for them.
So it was really more of the characters, even though it had some of the traditional tropes. But the way they get away sometimes is they're trapped in an old donut shop and they go to the roof and they start throwing sacks of sugar at the horde. And it's a little funny because donuts are usually associated with happy things.
Yeah.
So we tried to mix it up, and we got it picked up. We're just waiting for final announcement. But with all the zombie films out there, they just remade Night of the Living Dead. That lasted a minute. That looked terrible.
They remade it again? Because I know Tom Savini made it back in the day.
And I respect Tom Savini's version of it, even though that's not my favorite. I mean, it's good, but there's nothing
can't beat
like
the first one. You just can't. It's like you can't.
You can't. So they wrote another one that just came out.
Oh, okay. I haven't even heard
about
it.
It left the theater so fast. Now it's on, if you have any kind of
extreme
Fire TV, you'll find it in streaming. So I'm anxious to watch it. But when I was looking at it, I was like, oh my goodness, you just can't remake that film. You just can't.
It's just such a simple story too, and it's simple because it was one of the first ones to tell that type of story. So I just don't think there's any necessarily reason to remake that one. If
you brought it up, it wasn't just the story; it was how George Romero filmed it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They can't recapture that in a remake.
No, especially the ending too, with the stills.
Right.
It's just like that. That ending was just so bleak, and you're just the way he like depicted it with the stills, the news footage like of it all just made it seem so, you lost the personality in Ben when he died.
George A. Romero was very much into like social causes. Yeah. He wrote a book. You should see the movie. It came out way after postmortem, but the amusement park.
Oh, I saw it. It was on Shudder. Had an exclusive of it. Yeah, right. I loved it. It was fantastic. Just seeing this guy just get disrespected for like an hour, 10 minutes.
And you like what was George and the state of healthcare, even when he was doing it and all this other stuff. I mean, so the way, like you said, the way George A. Romero filmed the first Night of the Living Dead, you can't replicate that. And you kill the black guy. The hero is black. And for 1968, that's totally unusual.
Yeah, that was revolutionary.
And you love Ben, right? And you think about how people were watching that at the time. He's got a white woman on the couch. Oh, yeah, right? Think about the racial undertones of that and how George Romero totally turned it. The guy was like this massive hero, and that he dies at the end is like, what happened? here. After all of this, he's gone, right? And the way he filmed it, the way Ben fell back, and like you
Mm,
said, the stills when they're bringing all the body, you can't replicate that in new film today. You can't. There's
mm-mm.
no, there's no way to do it.
No, I mean, it's interesting you mentioning kind of like the social causes of George, like Dawn of the Dead takes right to consumerism with the shopping mall,
That's right. That's
and I'm
right.
blanking on the kind of issues he was touching on for Day of the Dead, because there was the underground bunkers, it was the military, was the main focus.
Yeah, I always meant to ask Lori Cardeal about that, because her dad was Chili Billy Cardeal, who played the reporter, the TV guy in the first Night of the Living Dead.
Okay, that's so
The guy
cool.
with the hat, that was
Yeah.
Billy. That was Chili Billy, right? He was a Philly icon, like a late night TV.
Oh wow. Okay.
Like, yeah, he was like, and Lori got the role as the in Day of the Dead. But I think that was also the strength of women and the overarching military, the goons, right? Kind of thing. But I don't. To your point, I don't know if it was as there were a lot of good social themes in it, but not as strong. I think as like Dawn of the Dead, and the consumerism was just in your face, right? They come here because they know what was the line? What was that seminal line? Why do they come here? Because they know they were happy once, or whatever it is, right? I can't remember, but it was just an amazing line, right? Because John Russo also, I don't know if he was involved with that. I don't think he was, but another great writer, John Russo. So is writes a book a week. I don't know how he does it. It's amazing.
Whew.
Um,
Flow
so
state.
the dude is like, he's got another book. Like,
He's got
I read
another one.
everything he writes, but I'm like, oh my god, how does he have another book? Um, so I agree with you. It's really hard. So I tried to write in this other horror script this commentary about how our diets are terrible.
Yeah.
Um, in Maggie's place, it's more of how I feel people will relate to a flawed character who needs to step up, who feels terrible that she's responsible for the death of her child, but yet she gets one more chance to save him. Think about all the times you've lost someone you loved
Mm-hmm.
and said to yourself, if I could have just done anything to save them or see them again. She gets that opportunity, not with him, but his soul. She gets that opportunity to redeem herself and to redeem her boy, and shake off that guilt. How many people would love to have a second chance,
Oh yeah.
shake off the guilt? So there's a lot behind the themes of Maggie's Place that I want the audience to be. I love these characters, but I want to be scared too, and I want to understand it. And creating, so when I look at it, when I try to create a script, there's an idea that pops in my head at 2 in the morning, or I'm sitting in a diner. I right away. You probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
You got a notebook
Almost gotta
wherever you
write it.
go, write it out. Then from there, I think about that's my structure in a long-winded way. Who is the main character? What are the needs and wants of this character? What are their emotional conflicts? What has happened to them? How damaged goods are they?
Mm-hmm.
And can the audience relate to this damaged goods of this character? So I'm going to write that character. I'm going to build my music list for that character and live in this character's skin for about a week. That's what I'm going to do there. Then I'm going to write the ending.
Okay.
I,
Wow.
I structure where I think about where I want to end it, and then subconsciously my brain will work toward the end,
And you go backwards from there?
and I go backwards.
Fascinating.
I go right through the redemption arc. I know pretty much where I want it to end. Because for every writer, once you get past the inciting incident and you're in the throes of the script, you feel sick,
Yeah.
because that's that stretch before the third act. You
Mm-hmm.
know you're in like the forbidden zone in Planet of the Apes,
Yeah, there's
right?
so much possibility like that you can
But where do you
go.
start, right? He
Where do you
was so
start?
good right up to this inciting incident, but now I got to now continue the story. So then what I do is I look at how long I think this bridge is going to be, and I come up with what I call blood points or peak points where the character is absolutely challenged, and then that last peak point, it looks like that person is lost, or some writing
Mm-hmm.
structure will call it dark night of the soul,
Yeah.
right? So to me, Erica's dark night of the soul is that she lost her son. She couldn't kill herself. She couldn't give herself over to the demon. And she kills her son again because now her son's soul is going to be in eternal torture.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads you to the third. So you got to look at who your main character is and fall in love with your protagonist and fall in respect in sort of a hateful, I think I like you a lot, like Negan from Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the attitude of this character, but he's sick. But there's something I really like about it because
Yeah.
he's a light. He's the arch of the that antagonist is really the mirror image of your protagonist.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
They share the dark and the light,
Gotta
right?
have the yin and yang.
Right. So that's how I started. But I got to have an idea, and to your point, write it out. And um, you mentioned this, I think, when we talked about if you're a writer or you're in a zone, you look at everything around you. You become much more present in your situation to where you can look at a light bulb and possibly create a story about it.
Yeah.
So like you go to an abandoned building, some people just might walk through it and go, yeah, yeah, that's cool. But you focus on this one piece of paper, or you're focused on something that a story could emerge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my structure is but I'm very structured.
Yeah.
But the messy part is the theme, the characters, how I love them and hate them, their internal intentions, their needs and wants. Um, Erica wants to run away from town, from home, to create a new life, but she really needs to forgive herself for the death of her son. Two different things, and that's how I got to battle those like a ping pong ball between those feelings in her, and then I'll write the end or where I think the end should go, and then from that end I'll work backwards and then create my well, hell, how am I going to get to that side of the bridge? I know I want to get there. And that's where I got to go through the forbidden zone, as I call it, of writing and create my blood points and the bloodiest point. And that don't mean blood, it's figurative, right? Like
Yeah. Of
some
course.
conflict and some conflict. And not only that, when you first start that second part or that second act, you got sort of a B story going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Erica, she's got family back home and friends back home that wondering what's going on, and you got to weave that in, and that to me is so difficult to do, and that's where I spend most of my time. I could write a third act and a first act real fast. Most of my time is in the forbidden zone and trying to work my way out to the ending, um, and the twists and turns. And I think for any writer, that middle part of the script is
Yeah.
hell.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm like in the middle of that right now. So it's like,
Oh my god, it's like you know how you get out of it. You have to write yourself out of it,
literally.
even if it
Yup.
sucks. Write yourself out. Like, in other
Uh,
words, I call it the Nick and Jack Cave. There's this whole story about how Johnny Cash,
mm-hmm.
totally despondent about June, he goes into Nick and Jack Cave in Tennessee and totally gets lost in this cave. He doesn't want to die. He can't find the light. And then he winds up finding his way out. And the only way he found his way out is just he kept trying. He just kept doing that until he found the opening. And you are like in the dark for that part of the script. You are
Mm-hmm.
like, so I think the only way out of it is to write at yourself out of it. You just
Yeah.
trudge,
Your
and then
words
sometimes
are the flashlight to get to lead you out.
exactly, and sometimes those words suck. That flashlight is
It's not
terrible.
bright enough. It flickers here and there.
So that's my process. But it always starts from a really good story and someone I can drop into it
Yeah, of course.
that I think the audience will really, really connect to because they have some of the same flaws as that character.
The connective thread. We do have to wrap up, so this is something I like to ask my guests to, express before they leave. But what are some wise words you could give to the audience? Any screenwriters out there, any filmmakers in general, humans that they could take home and express on their own accord.
The first thing I would say is don't stop. We're all gonna listen. You know what I say? If I never get a script produced, I'll still write. You gotta love it, right? Read as many scripts as possible. I have at all times, like right now on my Adobe, I've got 7 scripts open. I've got The Patriot, I've got Rocky, I've got oh my gosh, I got Cabin in the Woods, I've got Signs, right? Read scripts. I know it sounds crazy, but you're going to learn different words that you can use and things. Listen, plagiarize, man. Like in other words, every artist is stealing off another artist, not word for word, but oh wow, look how I always wondered how they frame like a certain James Bond scene, like in Casino Royale. How did they do it? And on screen it looks so much better. So read a lot of scripts. If you go to Scriptfly, now they're not cheap. They're like $14.95 each script. So find the genre you want and scripts like I would love to write a script like that. Download the script and cut it apart. That will help you. And always keep the notebook with you and think about being in your character's shoes for a period of time. Because even when you know this, when you're not writing, you're writing. In other words, if you're driving and you're thinking about this character in the script, something's going to pop up in your head, even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And you're going to get up and write it out. So just keep going. Writing is very therapeutic. Read the scripts, script out characters that you would love, heroes in these things. But be aware. We talked about this most important thing, and that's it. Your surroundings are full of stories if you can pull them out. And I think that's what, I'm absolutely not the best writer, but I think a lot of really good writers that we know, they pull stuff out of the atmosphere because they are present in the moment and they see things that other people don't see. And that takes time.
Richard, Herbert, and I thank you for coming on the show.
Herbert, man, I'm going to try to find your cousin. And he or she will not be as cute as you, but I am going to try at Spirit Halloween to find baby Herbie or Herbie or something, but you're going to have a cousin in Texas. So we'll come visit.
There we go. We can do some play dates. Herbert, you hear that? Get excited. All right, Richard. Thanks again. Have a good one.